Captain Lee Taemin stood at the viewing window of the diplomatic vessel Soul's Pride and watched the massive space station grow larger ahead of them. The Galactic Council headquarters looked like a giant metal flower floating in space, with dozens of docking arms reaching out in all directions. Ships from across the galaxy came and went constantly, carrying representatives from the 7 major civilizations that ruled known space. Taemin felt his jaw tighten as he watched a sleek, Vexari warship glide past them without any acknowledgement. The red and gold vessel was 3 times the size of Soul's Pride and bristled with weapons that could turn his ship into space dust in seconds. The Vexari captain probably didn't even know humans existed, despite Earth having sent diplomatic missions to the Council for over 50 years. "We're being given Docking Bay 847, said Dr. Park So-Ra from behind him. She was reading from her data pad with a frown on her face. "That's in the lower maintenance section." "Of course it is," Taemin replied without turning around. "Right next to the garbage disposal units, I bet." So-Ra moved to stand beside him at the window. She was a brilliant woman who knew more about alien biology than anyone else on Earth. But sometimes Taemin thought she was too optimistic about how other species saw humanity. She still believed that peaceful talks and showing their scientific achievements would eventually earn them respect. "Maybe this time will be different," she said. "I've prepared a presentation about our recent medical breakthroughs. The cure we developed for Krellian bone rot could help millions of beings across the galaxy." Taemin finally turned to look at her. "So-Ra, they've ignored our medical research for 30 years. They've ignored our agricultural improvements, our clean energy solutions, and our mathematical theorems. What makes you think they'll care now?" "Because it's the right thing to do," she answered firmly. "We're all part of this galaxy. We should work together." The captain sighed and looked back out the window. He wished he could share her faith, but he'd been to too many of these meetings. He'd watched human representatives stand before the council and present amazing discoveries, only to be dismissed as interesting but primitive efforts. He'd seen alien delegates laugh when humans requested trade agreements or defensive pacts. Worst of all, he'd heard them refer to Earth as that little backwater planet with the talking apes. The Soul's Pride docked with a soft thud, and within an hour they were walking through the station's corridors toward the main assembly hall. The ceilings were built to accommodate the tallest species in the council, making Taemin and So-Ra feel like children walking through an adult building. Other beings moved past them without a glance. The insectoid Krelli with their clicking feet, the massive stone-like Borvani, who made the floor shake when they walked, and the floating energy beings called Nethys, who left trails of sparkling light in the air. The assembly hall was enormous, with curved walls that rose up hundreds of meters to a domed ceiling. Thousands of seats were arranged in sections, each area designed for different alien physiologies. The human section was a small cluster of normal chairs tucked away in a corner, with a view blocked by a support pillar. So-Ra took her seat and began organizing her presentation materials. Taemin sat beside her and watched the hall fill with representatives. The Vexari delegation occupied a huge section near the front, their red military uniforms making them look like drops of blood against the white walls. The crystalline Nethys floated in their special energy chambers, while the Krelli clicked and chittered in their bug-like language. "Today we have several important matters to discuss," announced the council speaker, a tall Vexari with silver markings on his face. "First, the expansion of mining operations in the Outer Rim territories. Second, new regulations for interstellar shipping lanes. And finally, we have a request from the human delegation." A wave of murmurs and what sounded like laughter rippled through the hall. Taemin felt his face grow hot with anger, but So-Ra placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Let them laugh," she whispered. "We'll show them what humans can do." The first 2 topics took nearly 6 hours. The major civilizations argued about mining rights and trade routes, making deals that would affect billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. Humans weren't part of any of these discussions. Earth wasn't considered important enough to have mining claims or major shipping routes. Finally, as the artificial sun in the ceiling began to dim to simulate evening, the speaker called for the human presentation. "The delegation from Earth has requested time to address the council he said with barely hidden boredom. Dr. Park Sora will speak for humanity. Sora stood and walked to the central platform. Her small figure looked tiny in the vast space, and her voice seemed to echo strangely as she began to speak. Honored representatives, she said, I come before you today to share a medical breakthrough that could benefit all our species. Our scientists have developed a cure for Krellian bone rot, a disease that has plagued the Krelli people for centuries. She activated a holographic display showing detailed medical data, genetic charts, and treatment protocols. The information was clear and well organized, representing years of careful research by Earth's best doctors and scientists. This treatment is completely effective and has no side effects, Sora continued. We offer it freely to the galaxy as a gesture of goodwill and our desire to contribute to the common welfare of all species. The hall was silent for a moment. Then a Krelli representative spoke up, his voice buzzing and clicking through the translation device. The Krelli appreciate this attempt at helping, he said. But we have our own medical researchers working on this problem. We do not need primitive solutions from a species that has barely learned to travel between stars. More laughter rippled through the hall. A Vexari delegate stood up, his red uniform glittering with medals and rank insignia. With respect to the human delegation, he said in a voice that held no respect at all, we find it amusing that a species of barely evolved apes thinks it can solve problems that have challenged our greatest minds. Perhaps you should focus on learning basic spaceflight before attempting advanced medicine. The laughter grew louder. Sora's face went pale, but she maintained her composure. If you would examine our research, she said, raising her voice to be heard over the noise, you would see that our methods are sound and our results are proven. Proven on what? Called out a Nethys representative, its crystalline body pulsing with light. On your own primitive species? We do not share your simple biology, little human. What works for you would likely kill more advanced beings. The insults continued for several minutes. Representatives mocked humanity's cute attempts at science and suggested that humans should be grateful for the privilege of serving as laborers in the great galactic civilization. One Borvani delegate rumbled that humans might make decent pets if properly trained. Throughout it all, Taemin sat in his chair with his hands clenched into fists. He watched Sora's presentation be dismissed without even a proper examination. He saw her face crumple as beings she had hoped to help treated her like a child playing with toys. Finally, the speaker called for order. The council thanks the human delegation for their contribution, he said. However, we do not feel that Earth is ready for full participation in galactic civilization. Perhaps in a few centuries, when your species has matured, we can revisit this discussion. What about our application for membership in the Galactic Defense Initiative? Taemin found himself asking as he stood up. He hadn't planned to speak, but the words came out before he could stop them. The laughter that followed was the loudest yet. The speaker looked at him with what might have been pity on an alien face. Captain Taemin, is it? He said. Humanity has no military capabilities worth mentioning. Your largest warships would serve as adequate scout vessels for our defensive fleets. The Defense Initiative is for civilizations that can contribute meaningful military strength to galactic security. We have over 200 ships in our space fleet, Taemin said, his voice rising despite his efforts to stay calm. 200 tiny vessels with primitive weapons and slow engines, replied the Vexari delegate who had spoken earlier. My personal escort squadron alone could defeat your entire navy without suffering a single casualty. The hall erupted in laughter again. Taemin felt his face burning with shame and rage. Beside him, Sora was quietly packing up her materials with tears in her eyes. This session is closed, announced the speaker. The council will reconvene tomorrow to discuss the trade dispute between the Vexari Empire and the Krelli Collective. As the representatives began to file out, many of them still chuckling about the human presentation, Taemin helped Sora gather her things. Neither of them spoke until they were back in the corridor outside the hall. 50 years, Sora said, quietly. 50 years of trying to prove we belong here and they still see us as animals. Before Taemin could reply, his communication device beeped with an incoming message. He activated it and saw the face of his communications officer aboard Soul's Pride. "Captain," the officer said, "we've received priority Alpha orders directly from Earth Command. You and Dr. Park are to return to Earth immediately. All diplomatic missions are being recalled." "What's the emergency?" Taemin asked. The journey back to Earth took 12 days, and Captain Lee Taemin spent most of that time trying to figure out what could be so important that every human ship in the galaxy was being recalled at once. Dr. Park Sora had retreated to her quarters. After the first day, still hurt by the humiliation at the Galactic Council, she spent her time writing reports that no one would ever read, documenting years of failed diplomatic efforts. When the Soul's Pride finally dropped out of faster than light travel at the edge of the solar system, Taemin expected to see the usual small collection of human patrol ships and mining vessels. Instead, he found himself staring at what looked like a military convention. Hundreds of ships filled the space around Earth, more vessels than Taemin had known humanity possessed. There were massive cargo haulers that he'd never seen before, sleek ships with designs that looked decades ahead of anything in the official fleet, and strange cylindrical vessels that didn't match any classification he knew. "Captain," called his navigation officer, "Earth Control is directing us to Docking Bay 7 at Luna Station." Luna Station was Earth's main orbital facility, built into the surface of the Moon. It had always been a modest operation compared to the massive installations of other civilizations, but as Soul's Pride approached, Taemin could see that it had been expanded dramatically. New sections stretched across kilometers of lunar surface, all of them bustling with activity. The docking procedure took 3 hours because of the heavy traffic. Ships were arriving constantly from every direction, and Taemin recognized some of the captains on the communication channels. These were people he'd served with years ago, commanders of vessels he thought had been decommissioned or lost. Finally docked, Taemin and Sora made their way through corridors that seemed to pulse with urgent energy. Military personnel moved quickly between rooms, carrying sealed cases and speaking in hushed voices. The atmosphere reminded Taemin of the hours before a major battle, but he couldn't understand what humanity might be preparing to fight. They were directed to a shuttle that took them down to Earth's surface, but not to any location Taemin recognized. Instead of landing at the usual diplomatic facilities in Geneva or New York, they found themselves descending toward the mountains of Korea, far from any major city. The landing pad was carved directly into the mountainside, hidden from orbital observation by layers of rock and metal. As they stepped off the shuttle, Taemin realized that the entire mountain had been hollowed out. Corridors stretched away in every direction, lit by panels that cast everything in a cold white light. "Captain Lee and Dr. Park," said a young officer who greeted them at the landing pad. "Admiral Kim Dae-ho is waiting for you in conference room, Alpha." They followed the officer through a maze of corridors that seemed to go on forever. Taemin saw doorways marked with signs he didn't recognize: Gravitational Research Division, Deep Space Intelligence, Strategic Deception Unit. The scale of the operation was overwhelming. How long had this been going on? How had humanity built all of this without anyone knowing? Conference Room Alpha turned out to be a massive space with walls covered in displays showing star charts, ship designs, and what looked like battle plans. At the center of it all stood Admiral Kim Dae-ho, a man Taemin had met only twice before. The Admiral was older now, his hair completely gray, but his eyes held the same sharp intelligence that had made him legendary in military circles. "Captain Doctor," he said as they entered. "Thank you for coming so quickly." "Admiral," Taemin replied, "what's going on? I've never seen so many ships in one place." Kim Dae-ho gestured to chairs around a large table. "Please sit down. What I'm about to tell you will change everything you think you know about humanity's place in the galaxy." Sora spoke up for the first time since leaving the council station. "Are we going to war?" The Admiral's smile was cold. "In a sense, yes, but not the kind of war you might expect." He activated a holographic display above the table, showing the familiar blue sphere of Earth. "Tell me, what do you see when you look at this planet?" "Home," Taemin answered. "The birth world of humanity," Sora added. "Both correct," Kim Dae-ho said, "but incomplete." The image zoomed in, showing Earth's continents and oceans. What you see here is the surface layer, the part of our world that we've allowed the galaxy to observe for the past century. The hologram changed, showing a cross-section of the planet. Taemin gasped as he saw the true scope of human civilization. Beneath the familiar surface cities lay vast underground complexes that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Manufacturing centers, research facilities, military bases, and entire cities existed in spaces that sensors from orbit would never detect. For 80 years, the Admiral continued, humanity has been preparing for this moment. While our diplomats begged for acceptance and our scientists offered gifts that were rejected, our real work was happening here beneath the surface, hidden from prying eyes. But why? Sora asked. Why hide our true capabilities? Because we knew that revealing our strength too early would result in our destruction, Kim Dae-ho replied. The galaxy's great civilizations don't tolerate competition. If they had known what we were building, they would have united to crush us before we were ready. The hologram shifted again, showing technical diagrams of ships and weapons that looked like they belonged in a science fiction story. The designs were sleek and deadly, incorporating technologies that Taemin didn't recognize. The ships you saw in orbit are only a small part of our fleet, the Admiral said. Most of our vessels remain hidden, waiting for the order to reveal themselves. How many ships are we talking about? Taemin asked. 3,742 combat vessels. Kim Dae-ho answered without hesitation. Plus support craft, the number rises to over 6,000. The silence in the room was complete. 6,000 ships. The Vexari Empire, the strongest military force in the galaxy, had maybe 2,000 vessels in their entire fleet. That's impossible, Sora whispered. How could we build so many ships without anyone noticing? Patience, planning, and a very long time, the Admiral replied. We've been working on this project for nearly a century, using materials mined from asteroids in distant systems, manufacturing in facilities that exist only in empty space, far from any shipping lanes where they might be detected. He touched another control, and the hologram showed a massive vessel that dwarfed anything Taemin had ever seen. The ship was 15 kilometers long, with a hull that seemed to bend light around it. At its center was a structure that looked like a contained storm of energy. This is the Daehan's Fury, Kim Dae-ho said with obvious pride, our flagship and the most powerful weapon ever created by any known civilization. What does it do? Taemin asked. It kills planets, the Admiral answered simply. The room fell silent again. Even in an age of incredible weapons, the idea of a ship that could destroy entire worlds was terrifying. The Daehan's Fury is powered by a controlled micro-black hole, Kim Dae-ho explained. Its main weapon can manipulate gravity itself, compressing matter or tearing it apart at the molecular level. Conventional shields are useless against it. Where is it now? Sora asked. Beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility built into the deepest ocean trench on Earth. It has been waiting there for 15 years, ready for the day when we would need it. Taemin's mind was reeling from the revelations. And today is that day? Today is that day, the Admiral confirmed. This morning, while you were traveling back from the Council Station, our deep space monitoring systems detected something approaching from the edge of the galaxy. Something that has been hiding in the darkness between stars for over 1,000 years. The hologram changed once more, showing a star chart with a red marker moving slowly toward the galaxy's populated regions. We call them the Void Reapers, Kim Dae-ho said. An ancient mechanical civilization that consumes entire star systems to fuel their expansion. They swept through this galaxy once before, leaving only the outer rim species as survivors hiding in the far reaches of space. The species in the Galactic Council, Sora said, understanding dawning in her voice. Exactly. The Vexari, the Krelli, the Borvani, all of them are descendants of refugees who fled to the galaxy's edge when the Reapers came the first time. They built their civilizations in the safe outer territories and convinced themselves they were the masters of the galaxy. But they never defeated the Reapers, Taemin said. No. The Reapers simply left after consuming the core worlds. But now they're returning, and this time they won't stop until they've devoured everything. Kim Dae-ho stood and walked to one of the wall displays, which showed intercepted alien communications from across the galaxy. Our intelligence networks have been monitoring galactic communications for decades, he said. The so-called great civilizations have no idea what's coming. Their weapons are designed to fight each other, not an enemy that can absorb energy and convert it to fuel their own systems. But we can fight them? Sora asked. We were designed to fight them, the Admiral replied. Every weapon we've built, every ship we've designed, every tactical system we've developed, all of it was created with the Reapers in mind. We've had 80 years to study the evidence they left behind and prepare for their return. He turned back to face them. Commander Han Yu-jin stood on the bridge of the Daehan's Fury and watched the final system checks scroll across her screens. Around her, 200 crew members worked at their stations with the quiet efficiency that came from years of training for this single moment. They had practiced this sequence thousands of times in simulations, but today was different. Today the galaxy would see what humanity had built in secret. All systems show green, reported Engineer Choi Min-ho from his position at the massive control panel that managed the ship's black hole drive. Gravitational containment is stable. Power output is at optimal levels. Excellent, Yu-jin replied. She was a small woman by human standards, but her presence on the bridge was commanding. She had been chosen to captain the Daehan's Fury not because of her size or her voice, but because of her absolutely unshakable will. When the orders came to destroy something, she would not hesitate. Commander, called the communications officer. Admiral Kim Dae-ho is requesting final confirmation. Yu-jin activated the communication link to Earth's underground command center. The Admiral's face appeared on her screen, and behind him she could see the busy activity of the war room that had been preparing for this day for decades. Admiral, she said, the Daehan's Fury is ready for surface operations. Very good, Commander. Begin ascent in 30 minutes. The galaxy is about to discover that humanity is not as defenseless as they believed. The communication ended, and Yu-jin turned to address her crew. They had all volunteered for this mission, knowing that they would be making history. Some of them had families who didn't even know what their real jobs were. For years, these men and women had told their loved ones they worked in deep sea, research, or mineral extraction. It wasn't entirely a lie. Attention all hands, Yu-jin announced over the ship's internal communication system. In 30 minutes, we will begin our ascent to the surface. Today, humanity reveals its true strength to the galaxy. Remember your training, trust in your equipment, and know that you are making history. She looked out through the bridge's massive viewing ports at the underwater facility that had been the Daehan's Fury's home for 15 years. The artificial cavern was over 20 kilometers long and 10 kilometers wide, carved from the ocean floor of the deepest trench on Earth. Thousands of technicians in underwater suits moved around the ship like tiny insects, making final preparations and removing the last of the support structures. The Daehan's Fury itself was a sight that still took Yu-jin's breath away, even after commanding it for 3 years. The ship was a work of art as much as a weapon of war. Its hull was made from materials that didn't officially exist, metals that had been developed in secret laboratories and could withstand forces that would crush any other known vessel. The ship's surface seemed to shift and flow in the underwater lights as if it were alive. At the center of the vessel, contained within layers of exotic matter and electromagnetic fields, was the micro-black hole that powered everything. It was barely the size of an atom, but it contained more energy than most stars. The technology to create and control it had taken humanity 50 years to develop, working from theoretical physics that alien civilizations had dismissed as impossible. 20 minutes to ascent, announced the navigation officer. Around the ship, the underwater facility began its final preparations. Massive doors in the ocean floor slowly opened, revealing a tunnel that stretched up through kilometers of water to the surface far above. The tunnel had been built in sections over 30 years, disguised as deep ocean research projects that no one had bothered to investigate. All stations report ready, said the operations officer. Yu-jin nodded and activated the ship's main communication system. This is Commander Han Yu-jin to all human vessels. Operation Dawnbreak is now active. Take your positions and await further orders. Throughout the solar system and beyond, hundreds of human ships that had been disguised as cargo haulers and research vessels suddenly revealed their true nature. Weapon systems that had been hidden behind false hulls deployed. Advanced sensors came online, and engines that were far more powerful than they appeared began to charge for combat operations. 10 minutes to ascent. On Earth's surface, in secret, installations hidden beneath mountains and deserts. Massive sensor arrays activated and began scanning the galaxy for alien reactions. Within hours, every major civilization would detect the Daehan's fury rising from Earth's ocean. The question was how they would respond. 5 minutes to ascent. Yu-jin took her position in the captain's chair and strapped herself in. The ascent would create forces that could kill an unprotected human, but the ship's artificial gravity systems would keep her crew safe. She hoped. They had tested everything in simulations, but this was the first time anyone had tried to take a 15-kilometer warship from the bottom of the ocean to space. All stations prepare for ascent, she commanded. Gravitational drive online, reported Choi Min-ho. Navigation systems active. Structural integrity fields at maximum. Communication arrays ready. Weapon systems standing by. Yu-jin looked at the countdown timer on her screen. 30 seconds, 20, 10. Begin ascent, she ordered. The Daehan's fury rose from its underwater berth like a sleeping giant awakening. Water rushed past the viewing ports as the massive ship climbed through the artificial tunnel toward the surface. The forces involved were incredible, but the ship's systems handled them without strain. Ascent rate nominal, reported the navigation officer. We'll reach the surface in 12 minutes. Around the world, human monitoring stations tracked the ship's progress and prepared for the galactic reaction. In the underground command center, Admiral Kim Dae-ho watched dozens of screens, showing alien communication networks and military installations. "Sir," called one of his intelligence officers, "we're detecting increased activity at Vexari Fleet Headquarters. They're bringing their sensor networks online." "Let them look," the Admiral replied. "In a few minutes, they'll have plenty to see." The Daehan's fury broke the surface of the Pacific Ocean like a mountain rising from the deep. Water cascaded from its hull as the ship climbed into the sky, its black hole drive creating distortions in space-time that could be detected from orbit. The ocean around the emergence point boiled from the energies being released, creating a column of steam that reached into the clouds. "We have cleared the atmosphere," announced the navigation officer, moving to orbital position. Around Earth, the hidden human fleet began to decloak. One by one, ships that had been disguised or hidden revealed themselves. What had appeared to be a small collection of primitive vessels suddenly became a massive armada that dwarfed the combined fleets of the major galactic powers. "Commander," called the communications officer, "we're receiving urgent transmissions from every alien embassy on Earth. They're demanding to know what's happening." "Ignore them," Yu-jin ordered. "They'll understand soon enough." On the screens, around her she could see the real-time reactions from across the galaxy. At the Galactic Council headquarters, emergency sessions were being called. On Vexari Prime, the military high command was scrambling to understand what they were seeing. In the crystal cities of the Nethys, energy beings were pulsing with what could only be described as panic. "Admiral Kim Dae-ho is requesting communication," reported the officer. The Admiral's face appeared on the main screen, and Yu-jin could see satisfaction in his eyes. "Commander, how does it feel to be making history?" "It feels like vindication, sir," she replied. "Indeed it does. Now let's give our galactic neighbors a proper demonstration. Take the Daehan's fury to the moon designated Target Alpha." Yu-jin nodded. Target Alpha was an uninhabited moon in the outer solar system, chosen specifically for this demonstration. It was large enough to be impressive, but small enough that its destruction wouldn't affect any planetary systems. "Navigator, set course for Target Alpha. Maximum speed." The Daehan's fury accelerated smoothly away from Earth, its black hole drive creating a visible distortion in space that made the stars seem to bend around it. The ship's speed increased rapidly, far faster than any known vessel could travel. Without entering hyperspace, We'll reach the target in 40 minutes, reported the navigator. Those 40 minutes gave the galaxy time to react. Across known space, alien governments held emergency meetings. The Vixari Empire scrambled its fleets, though they had no idea what they should do with them. The Krelly Collective sent urgent messages demanding explanations. The crystal beings known as Nethys attempted to scan the human vessel with their most advanced sensors, only to discover that their readings made no sense. "Commander," called the sensor operator, "I'm detecting multiple alien fleets moving toward our position. The Vixari have at least 50 ships en route." "Let them come," Eugen replied. "They can watch from a safe distance." The Dahan's Fury reached target Alpha exactly on schedule. The moon hung in space before them, a gray sphere about 1/4 the size of Earth's moon. It would serve perfectly for their purposes. "All stop," Eugen ordered. "Bring us to firing. Position." The massive ship rotated slowly until its main weapon array pointed directly at the moon. Along the ship's hull, panels slid aside to reveal the gravitational lance, a weapon that focused the output of the black hole drive into a coherent beam of pure spatial. Ambassador Yoon Hai-Rin walked through the corridors of the Galactic Council headquarters with a confidence that would have seemed impossible just days earlier. The same beings who had laughed at humanity's diplomatic efforts now stepped aside. As she passed, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and respect that she found deeply satisfying. The assembly hall looked exactly the same as it had during her predecessor's humiliating presentation, but the atmosphere was completely different. Where before there had been dismissive chatter and barely concealed amusement, now there was nervous silence. Every representative in the hall knew they were facing a species that could destroy their homeworlds with a single ship. Yoon Hai-Rin took her seat in what had once been the neglected human section, but which was now surrounded by empty chairs. No other delegation wanted to sit too close to humanity's representative, as if her presence might somehow contaminate them with the same terrible power her species had revealed. The council speaker, the same Vixari who had dismissed human contributions so casually before, now approached the podium with obvious reluctance. His silver face markings seemed to have lost their luster, and his voice shook slightly as he called the session to order. "The council recognizes Ambassador Yoon Hai-Rin of Earth," he said, though every word seemed to cause him physical pain. Yoon Hai-Rin stood and walked to the central platform, her footsteps echoing in the unnatural quiet. She looked around the hall at the assembled representatives, taking her time to meet the eyes of those who had been most vocal in their mockery of humanity. "Honored representatives," she began, her voice carrying easily through the vast space. "I come before you today, not as a supplicant begging for acceptance, but as the voice of humanity's demands." A shiver of unease went through the assembly. The word demands was not one they were used to hearing from human lips. "For 50 years, my species has attempted to join your galactic community through peaceful means. We offered knowledge, friendship, and cooperation. You rejected all of these gifts, dismissing us as primitive animals unworthy of your attention." The Krelly representative who had refused humanity's medical breakthrough shifted uncomfortably in his specialized chair. The Vixari delegate who had compared humans to barely evolved apes stared at his hands, unable to meet her gaze. "Yesterday, we demonstrated what humanity is truly capable of," Yoon Hai-Rin continued. "You witnessed the power of our technology and the extent of our military capabilities. But that demonstration was merely the beginning." She activated a holographic display that showed the current positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. The assembled representatives gasped as they saw the true scope of humanity's hidden fleet. Vessels that had been disguised as harmless traders and research ships were now revealed in their true military configurations, positioned near every major alien world. "At this moment," the ambassador said, "humanity has over 3,000 combat vessels distributed throughout known space. Many of them have been operating near your homeworlds for years, undetected by your supposedly advanced sensor networks." The implications were terrifying and clear. Humanity could have struck at any time, and the great civilizations of the galaxy would never have seen it coming. However, Yoon Hai-Rin continued, "humanity does not seek conquest for its own sake. We have revealed our strength for one purpose, to ensure that you listen when we speak and that you take our warnings seriously." The Borvani representative, a massive stone-like being whose voice usually rumbled through the hall like an earthquake, spoke in barely more than a whisper. What warnings? Yoon Haerin smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The warning that your civilizations are about to face extinction, and that humanity is the only force in this galaxy capable of preventing it. She changed the holographic display, showing a star chart with a red marker moving steadily toward the galaxy's populated regions. The marker represented something that was still months away, but its trajectory was unmistakable. For 30 years, humanity's deep space monitoring systems have been tracking an ancient threat that your species have forgotten. We call them the Void Reapers, and they are returning to finish what they started 1,000 years ago. The hall erupted in confused chatter. Several representatives demanded to know what she was talking about. Others activated their own data systems, trying to find any reference to these mysterious Void Reapers. You don't remember them, Yoon Haerin said, raising her voice to cut through the noise. But they remember you. Your civilizations exist only because your ancestors fled to the outer rim when the Reapers consumed the galaxy's core worlds. You built your empires in the safe territories they left behind, convincing yourselves that you were the masters of space. The Nethys representative, a crystalline being that glowed with internal light, pulsed with what seemed like panic. You're lying, it said, its voice a harmony of crystal chimes. The core worlds were destroyed by natural disasters, stellar collapses, and other cosmic events. Were they? Yoon Haerin asked. She activated another display, showing archaeological data that humanity had gathered from dozens of dead worlds. These are the remains of civilizations that once ruled the galaxy's core. Notice the pattern of destruction? The complete absence of organic matter? The way metal and stone have been processed and consumed? The evidence was overwhelming. World after world showed the same signs of systematic harvesting, as if some vast intelligence had methodically stripped away everything useful and left only empty husks behind. The Void Reapers are a machine civilization, the ambassador explained. They consume entire star systems to fuel their expansion, converting planets into raw materials for their fleets. They swept through this galaxy once before, and now they're returning for what they left behind. But why didn't they finish the job the first time? Asked the Vexari speaker, his voice barely audible. Because they had consumed enough to meet their immediate needs, Yoon Haerin replied. The Reapers are not driven by emotion or malice. They are supremely logical beings who harvest resources as efficiently as possible. 1,000 years ago, they took what they needed and moved on to other galaxies. But now they need more, and they remember where they left untapped resources. The horror of the situation began to sink in. The great civilizations of the galaxy were nothing more than reserves to be harvested when needed. How long do we have? Asked the Krelly representative, his insectoid features twitching with fear. 8 months until their advanced scout fleet arrives, Yoon Haerin answered. 14 months until their main force reaches the outer rim worlds. What do you want from us? The Vexari speaker asked. The ambassador smiled again, and this time there was genuine humor in it, though it was the dark humor of someone who held all the cards in a deadly game. Complete submission to human authority, she said simply. The hall exploded in outrage. Representatives leaped to their feet, shouting protests and denials. The Vexari delegation began making angry gestures that, in their culture, meant extreme insult. Several species activated their translation devices simultaneously, creating a cacophony of alien languages expressing fury and disbelief. Yoon Haerin waited patiently for the noise to die down, then continued, as if nothing had happened. You have 2 choices, she said. You can maintain your pride and face the Void Reapers with your current technology, in which case you will all be extinct within 2 years. Or you can accept human leadership of a unified defense, in which case some of you might survive. You're asking us to become your slaves, accused the Borvani representative. I'm offering you the chance to remain alive, the ambassador corrected. Your weapons are useless against the Reapers. They absorb energy and convert it to fuel their own systems. Your ships are too slow to escape them and too weak to damage them. Your military strategies are designed for fighting each other, not an enemy that views you as nothing more than resources to be harvested. She brought up technical displays showing human weapon systems and their capabilities. Humanity's technology was developed specifically to fight the Void Reapers. Our gravitational weapons bypass their energy absorption capabilities. Our ships can outrun their harvester fleets. Our tactics are designed to exploit the weaknesses we've identified in their operational patterns. How do you know so much about them? Asked the Nethys representative. Because we've been studying them for 80 years, Yunhairen replied. While you were building trade empires and arguing about territory, humanity was investigating the ruins they left behind. We found their abandoned technology, decoded their operational patterns, and prepared for their inevitable return. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Every human military development for the past century has been designed with one goal: defeating the Void Reapers. While you dismissed us as primitive, we were building the only force in this galaxy capable of stopping an enemy that once consumed everything you hold dear. What exactly are you demanding? Asked the Vexari speaker. Complete integration of all alien military forces under human command, the ambassador replied. All weapons development to be supervised by human engineers. All defensive strategies to be planned by human tacticians. All resource allocation to be managed by human administrators. In other words, said the Krelly representative, you want. Admiral Kim Dae-ho stood in the command center deep beneath the Korean mountains and watched as the final pieces of humanity's greatest gamble fell into place. On the screens around him, representatives from every major galactic civilization were formally surrendering their military forces to human command. The proud Vexari Empire, the ancient Krelly Collective, the mystical Nethys Concordat, all of them bowing to the species they had mocked just days earlier. The last holdout has just submitted, reported Colonel Oh Sang-min from his position at the intelligence station. The Borvani Republic has agreed to place their defense fleets under our authority. Excellent, the Admiral replied. How much time do we have? Dr. Park Ji-won looked up from her deep space monitoring console, her face grim. The Reaper advanced scouts will reach the Outer Rim in 6 months, 3 weeks. Their main fleet will arrive approximately 8 months after that. Kim Dae-ho nodded grimly. It wasn't much time to organize a defense against an enemy that had once consumed half the galaxy, but it would have to be enough. The alternative was extinction for every organic species in known space. Status report on fleet integration, he ordered. Proceeding faster than expected, replied Captain Lee Tae-min, who had been promoted to serve as liaison with the alien fleets. Most of the species are cooperating fully. They're scared enough that they're not questioning our orders. And the Yao ones who are questioning? The Vexari High Command is having trouble accepting human leadership, Tae-min admitted. Their military culture doesn't adapt well to taking orders from species they considered inferior. Then replace their high command with officers who can adapt, the Admiral said without hesitation. We don't have time for wounded pride. On another screen, Commander Han Yu-jin appeared from the bridge of the Dihan's Fury, which was now positioned at the galaxy's edge as an early warning system. Admiral, she reported, we're detecting increased activity in the dead zones. The Reapers are beginning to activate dormant systems they left behind during their last visit. Kim Dae-ho felt a chill run down his spine. The Void Reapers hadn't just consumed the galaxy's core worlds. They had left behind hidden installations that could serve as staging areas for their return. How many installations are we talking about? He asked. At least 40 that we can detect, Yu-jin replied. Probably more that are still dormant. Each one appears to be a manufacturing facility capable of producing Reaper combat units. The implications were terrifying. The Reapers wouldn't need to transport their entire fleet across intergalactic space. They could build new forces using the resources they had stockpiled during their last visit. Do we have the capability to destroy these installations? The Admiral asked. The Daehan's Fury can handle perhaps a dozen of them, Yu-jin said. But our other planet killers are still being integrated with alien support fleets. It will be weeks before they're ready for combat operations. General Nam Tae-young, the head of humanity's contingency defense protocol, stepped forward with a proposal that made everyone in the command center go silent. "Sir," he said, "I recommend we accelerate the Prometheus Protocol." The Prometheus Protocol was humanity's most desperate backup plan, something they had hoped never to use. It involved sharing advanced human technology with the alien species, giving them weapons and defenses that might allow them to survive the coming war. "That's incredibly dangerous," Dr. Park Ji-won objected. "If we give them our technology and they survive the Reapers, we'll have created potential threats to human dominance." "If we don't give them our technology," General Nam replied, "they'll all be dead, and we'll face the Reapers alone. Even with our capabilities, we need numbers." Admiral Kim Dae-ho considered the options. Everything humanity had worked for over the past century was leading to this moment. They could maintain their technological superiority and risk facing the Reapers with insufficient forces, or they could share their advantages and risk creating future enemies. Implement the Prometheus Protocol, he decided. Limited technology, transfer to key allies only. Gravitational weapon systems for their largest ships, improved armor and shielding for their defense fleets. "Sir," protested Colonel Oh Sang-min, "if we arm the alien species with our weapons, then they become useful allies instead of useless baggage," the Admiral finished. "We're not fighting for human dominance anymore, Colonel. We're fighting for the survival of organic life in this galaxy." Over the following weeks, human engineers worked around the clock to retrofit alien vessels with technology that had been secretly developed over decades. The process was not without problems. Vexari ships required complete redesigns to accommodate gravitational weapon systems. Krelli vessels needed new power cores that could handle the energy requirements of human defensive screens. The crystalline ships of the Nethys had to be fundamentally restructured to interface with human control systems. But gradually, a unified fleet began to take shape. What had once been 7 separate military forces became a single armada under human command, equipped with the most advanced weapons any of them had ever seen. Captain Park Sora, now serving as Chief Diplomatic Coordinator, found herself managing personalities and egos that had been accustomed to absolute authority within their own species. The job was like herding cats, if cats were giant insects, energy beings, and stone creatures who thought they knew better than everyone else. The Reu. Vexari admirals are still complaining about the command structure, she reported to Admiral Kim Dae-ho during one of their daily briefings. They think they should have equal authority with human officers. "They're wrong," the Admiral replied simply. "Human officers have trained for decades to fight the Reapers. Alien officers have trained to fight each other. There's a significant difference. And the Nethys representatives are asking for access to our black hole containment technology. Absolutely not. That stays classified at the highest levels." Sora nodded and made notes on her datapad. "What about the Krelli request for manufacturing rights to our gravitational lance systems?" "Approved, but only under direct human supervision. I want our engineers overseeing every step of their production process." The reports continued for another hour, covering everything from supply logistics to crew integration programs. The scale of the operation was staggering. Hundreds of worlds, thousands of ships, and millions of beings all working toward a single goal. 5 months later, long-range sensors detected the first Reaper scouts entering the galaxy. Commander Han Yujin was the first human to see them in real time, and the sight made her stomach clench with fear despite all her training and preparation. The Reaper ships were unlike anything in the databases, geometric forms that seemed to bend light around them, moving through space with the inevitability of natural disasters. "Admiral," she reported from the Dihan's Furies Bridge. "Visual confirmation of Reaper advance units. 12 vessels, each approximately 8 kilometers in length. They're heading directly for the Vexari outer colonies." "Understood," came Kim Dae-ho's reply. "You are authorized to engage. Show them what humanity has learned." The Daehan's Fury moved to intercept the Reaper scouts, its massive bulk accelerating to speeds that should have been impossible for something so large. Around it, a mixed fleet of human and alien vessels followed in formation, their crews tense with the knowledge that they were about to face an enemy that had once conquered the entire galaxy. The battle, when it came, was unlike anything any of them had expected. The Reapers fought with cold mechanical precision, their weapons designed to harvest rather than destroy. They tried to capture ships intact, seeking to convert them into raw materials for their expanding fleet. But human gravitational weapons proved effective against their energy absorption systems, tearing their geometric hulls apart at the molecular level. The first engagement lasted only 20 minutes, ending with all 12 Reaper scouts destroyed, and their wreckage scattered across several light-years of space. But even as the Allied fleet celebrated their victory, long-range sensors brought sobering news. "Admiral," Dr. Park Ji-won reported from Earth, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from the dead zones. The dormant installations are activating faster than we anticipated." How many new contacts? Over 300 and growing. They're manufacturing ships at a rate of approximately 50 units per day. The math was simple and terrifying. At that rate of production, the Reapers would have an enormous fleet ready by the time their main force arrived. Even with human technology, the Allied forces would be vastly outnumbered. "Implement Operation Thunderstrike," Admiral Kim Dae-ho ordered. "All available planet killer vessels are to target Reaper manufacturing installations immediately." 4. The next 6 months, the galaxy became a battlefield on a scale never before seen in recorded history. Human-led task forces struck at Reaper installations throughout known space, destroying manufacturing facilities and stockpiled resources wherever they could find them. The Reapers responded by accelerating their production schedules and beginning attacks on inhabited worlds, seeking to harvest population centers for their organic components. The war reached its climax when the main Reaper fleet finally arrived from intergalactic space. Admiral Kim Dae-ho stood in the command center and watched as sensors detected over 10,000 enemy vessels.